Well, hello everybody. We've got issue 443 of African Energy, just hot off the presses, and it's a pretty packed issue. We led on Nigeria, the power sector, with lots of new material, some of it from our new Nigeria report that the Africa Energy Research Team are putting together, but also from our AIX Nigeria webinar very recently, but actually lots of other stuff as well. There's a lot going on. We focused on the NIPP projects, on removing bottlenecks, and we had I'd say, fairly realistic look at the direction that the industry is going in Nigeria, and we had some forecasts going from the African Energy Team going through to 2025 of what one can expect. The headline actually on the forecasts, I think, says it all really. It's improvement, but not transformation expected by 2025. There was also some interesting stuff about the petroleum industry bill, which has now been harmonized by the two houses of the Nigerian parliament. So it's just waiting for the assent of President Buhari. President, of course, remains in the UK on medical treatment, but that can perhaps be got around. And it looked at various aspects of the bill, including the interesting angle of how it will allow some players to actually be able to trade crude in Naira and not the usual dollars. And that, for a government that's very foreign exchange light, needs more. There'll be winners and losers. The winner that we particularly focused on is Nigeria's biggest businessman, of course, Aliko Dangote and his oil refinery company. So that was interesting stuff. Among other issues that we tackled were the big policy and political issues surrounding the Libyan National Oil Corporation. That country's finances, central bank, key issues that we've always followed, and how new twists and turns are happening in the Libyan situation. I'm delighted on the call. We've got my colleague John Hamilton, who has a long and distinguished career on the side as a Libya analyst and a very close watcher of the country from well before the end of Gaddafi's Jamahiriya right the way through to the present day. So, John, how would you typify the most recent elements that African energy readers should be really looking at closely in Libya?
Well, a few months ago, back in sort of March, April, Libya reached a moment when you could begin to hope, with all the inevitable provisos, that it had reached some sort of turning point. They managed to put a unity government together. It had all kinds of problems associated with it, but at least there was some sense of unity. Free, and the prospect that would lead to economic and development and a sort of emergence from this ongoing crisis. Unfortunately, all they've managed to really unify around so far is the fact that they'd like to get rid of Chairman of National Oil Corporation, Mustafa Sanalla. If you were going to make a list of the people who they really should get rid of in Libya, it would be quite a long one, and Mr. Sanalla would be quite a long way down the list. He's been the keystone of keeping the corporation together over an incredibly difficult period. Obviously, he can't last forever. Nobody can. But this doesn't seem like the most sensible way of going about it, particularly at a time when Libya is slowly running out of money. They need the oil and gas production to continue. Perhaps that is the one silver lining to a very black cloud, which is whatever the people who are running Libya do, they really can't afford to allow oil production to stop. So best case scenario, sort of situation as normal, terrible politics, completely dysfunctional, but they will somehow allow oil to keep on flowing.
That's good to know. And your view overall that we've got a situation at the moment, the oil minister out in conflict with Mr. Sanalla, who's been at NOC for a long time, is been a major player in global oil industry for a long time. And then you've got Prime Minister Dbeibah now. A lot of people are saying Dbeibah may not be for the long term, but I'm not sure you agree with that view, do you?
No, I think that when Dbeibah was chosen to be the head of the new unified government, the context of that was that elections were supposed to take place in December, but when that target was set, the details were not specified. Parliamentary, presidential, should they write a new constitution first? I mean, the details were left unspecified. And so this has left plenty of room for evasion. And it looks practically very difficult for elections to take place. There's no consensus around it. The people who dislike Dbeibah's government, and there are many, and the reasons for disliking it are perfectly justifiable, say that, well, he can't continue because he will just lack any legitimacy. But I think the question which people have to ask is whether that in itself doesn't mean that the government won't persist. If there's no alternative, then Libya will have to put up with a government that lacks legitimacy. In fact, as the way that it has done for the past many years. Once again, I come back to what I said earlier. It's situation normal for Libya. That is
normal for Libya. Not the happiest outlook, but one that persists. While we're keeping on the oil and gas thing, we've also got our oil editor or hydrocarbons editor, James Gavin, on the line. And James, you've been busy including looking at oil pipelines, the various projects across East Africa. So we know that the East Africa crude oil pipeline, ECOP, going from Lake Albert in Uganda to Tanga in Tanzania, is a definite solid project, if a controversial one. Do you see the region being even more crisscrossed by oil pipelines, or are we looking at a situation still where a lot of assets could be stranded?
I think you will see, and we are seeing more crisscrossing, and yet you can never exclude that possibility of more stranded assets, given the global picture and the way what majors have been doing, and which will inevitably lead to stranded assets somewhere in the globe. And there's no reason East Africa has no divine right to have all its assets monetized and flowing. Nonetheless, I think there is reason for cautious optimism on Lake Albert, as you were saying there. Things are grinding into motion. They're sort of starting to lay do the sort of groundwork. They're coming to arrangements with local communities, and NGOs and sort of protest movement. So you're starting to see that sort of political alignment happening, and then you will, because of the importance of some of those Ugandan oil projects involving Total and China's CNOOC, there's real importance invested in those. I mean, if Total's targets are to be met by 2025, they're going to be producing something like 200,000 barrels a day from their Tilenga development. So these are big muscly projects that will make a real difference to Uganda and for those countries through which
put them up by among the smaller OPEC African members, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
With you also, there is some talk around the Kenya crude oil pipeline project.
Yeah.
It's been waited a long time, 824 kilometers,
which is pretty long in itself, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
It is. It's a lot. Estimated what, $3 billion?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, and I mean that's all kind of connected with Tullow's Turkana. It's South Lockishar blocks. Tullow, as we know, in African energy readers will have been following in recent years. They've had some issues. They're refinancing, so things have perhaps been a little difficult for Tullow in the past. There seems to be, again, though, a bit more confidence coming out of the Tullow corporate HQ, and I think they're talking. I mean, there's the review, the technical reviews being done, so there seems to be confidence that will go ahead, and so that therefore makes the Kenya crude KCOP. It's like good cop and bad cop, isn't it?
Good cop and bad cop indeed.
So that seems to be. I think we can FID late 2022, something like that. That's what most people are anticipating. So that should be good, and then we'll see Lamu Port getting some nice flows going through it.
We shall see. That's it. Thanks, James. Look, we've got a lot else in the issue. There's a lot on South Africa. Not actually all focused on the awful riots, but clearly the political uncertainties. The relationship between President Ramaphosa and Minister Montashe comes up. But also we've got some quite interesting insights from within the South African authorities on Eskom's $10 billion decarbonisation plan, for which they'll be looking for money, and also issues around that new 100 megawatt threshold for electricity production by independent commercial and industrial operators, which I know the industry itself is very interested. Also in power, there's a package around floating solar PV options. That's a technology I think readers will know that from a view that I've always been particularly attracted myself. And we are seeing for the first time in Uganda, Ghana's got a small pilot project underway, floating PV projects coming, and that both increases the capacity of hydroelectric dams, because obviously you're stopping a lot of the evaporation of water while also generating electricity. What's not to like? Well, possibly the technical problems around it, but it's certainly it's an interesting package put together by one of our great power experts, Martin Burdett. Finally, before we finish, there's a lot more, but I think we'll go right to the back of the book, The African Energy View, and we targeted this on Egypt, John Hamilton's other great country of expertise, in Ethiopia, and we headlined it, National Destinies Collide. And in fact, that's a very John headline. Can you explain how national destinies are colliding between Egypt and Ethiopia, and what the impact is both for energy industries and the wider geopolitics, John? Indeed,
the kind of news hook for this view was the story that came out that that Egypt, or President Sisi, has instructed a cessation of cooperation with Rosatom over the construction of the great national project of building a nuclear power plant. And this came less than a week after a celebratory meeting which took place at the site of the plant, because they finally applied for the construction permit, something which has been waiting for several years. And when they're approved, that will really mean that the project has formally started. So why did this happen? Well, because Egypt is fighting a furious diplomatic battle to try and persuade countries around the world to join its side in the dispute with Ethiopia over filling the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And at a recent meeting of the United Nations Security Council, Russia didn't oblige. It didn't take Egypt's side, and so they've decided to put a block on their own great national project in order to try and stop Ethiopia proceeding with its great national project. Who knows whether this is going to work? I think what appears to be happening in Ethiopia is that it is quite successfully pursuing a unilateral strategy. No one has been able to stop it now over 2 years filling its dam, but it is building up quite a lot of debt on the diplomatic ledger. It's antagonizing friends and foe alike. I don't suppose Russia's that pleased to be put in this position. And it's reliant really on so far on there being really very heavy rains, meaning that it can divert a lot of water without causing very serious problems for the downstream countries. If in some future years the rains are not so obliging, Ethiopia is definitely going to have to think again, because there are potentially huge costs to what it's doing, and because it's taken this unilateral approach, when it wants friends, it may find it doesn't have very many.
Great, well, thank you. It's certainly a complex affair, and you're right, from the Ethiopian perspective, it gives a national victory at a time Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's feeling under a lot of pressure, not least after the spectacular Tigrayan victories. We will be back after a short summer break at the end of August with African Energy 444. And we wish subscribers good reading. Those who don't subscribe, well, subscribe. And we hope you'll have a good summer for those who are in that particular zone. Thank you very much.